Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield, working with members to find health coverage for every stage of life, helping to make care and coverage more accessible in more ways for more people across the Rochester community. Details online at excellusbcbs.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made Saturday morning in Tehran, where a group of Iranian leaders gathered to discuss a possible war with Israel and the United States. What they did not know was that the CIA had tracked their location, and Israel was ready to strike, launching the war and taking out Iran's supreme leader, along with more than a dozen other Iranian leaders at various levels. President Trump says that American lives will be lost in this operation, but it will be worth the effort to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons program. 3 American servicemen have been killed already in an Iranian counterstrike. President Trump is urging the Iranian people to rise up and overthrow their government and install a new form of democratic leadership. The call from President Trump evoked the call from then-President George H.W. Bush 35 years ago in 1991, telling the Iraqi people to rise up and overthrow their government at the time. A number of Iraqis tried and were crushed. Many were slaughtered. And for many Iranian people now, this is a stunning moment and perhaps a chance at a different kind of life. Iran's supreme leader had become a brutal oppressor, especially to women. And the question becomes, who can lead now? President Trump told reporters this weekend that his administration had identified a small handful of possible successors to the supreme leader, but they are now all dead, killed in the first day of bombing. So he says he's not sure who would be next. Let's talk about this remarkable turn of events with our guests this hour, and I want to welcome them now. Welcome back to the program, Dr. Niaz Abdolrahim, who is Associate Professor of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Rochester. Niaz, welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And Dr. Pouya Seifzadeh is Associate Professor of Strategy at SUNY Geneseo. Also a local business owner. He owns a number of the places that your kids probably like to play, like Bounce Hopper and Ontario Play and Cafe. Dr. Seifzadeh, thank you for being with us as well here.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to start with Niaz, and I'll just ask you, we spoke a month ago. I don't remember. It wasn't that long ago when the protests were happening, and it was clear that the Iranian regime was killing thousands of protesters in the street. And the question was, what comes next here? What is required of the United States? What will the United States do? Well, now we have some answers. What was Friday night, Saturday like for you? When did you find out? What was that like?
It was a moment that we waited for like more than 40 years to happen. So this regime, this person actually was responsible for the killing of many thousands of people in Iran. It was the person who was responsible for the poor economic situation in the country, and it was the person who was responsible for many proxy activities all around the region. So it was a moment of relief for me and for many Iranians, and we celebrated the ending to his era.
When the news came that bombing had started and that the first target was Iranian leadership, and then in the next few hours, Niaz, you had some Iranian minister saying, oh, the supreme leader is going to speak on television soon. He's going to speak in the next hour, and then he doesn't speak, and then he doesn't speak. It became kind of clearer that something had happened. Was that surreal? Did you find out before we did? Did you hear from people in Iran?
No.
No?
We just, for me, the first time, because I couldn't really, I was waiting for this moment my whole life. I couldn't really believe my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and nobody knew in Iran. And then I didn't want to believe if it was not true. So when it was the first time that I heard from the U.S. and Israeli authorities, because we never trust the Iranian, system and the media in Iran.
Is the first emotion relief?
Relief and celebration. We danced to his death.
Boy, Pouya, what was Friday night, Saturday like for you?
So Friday night, before the attack began, I started to have sort of look at some of the things that were happening, putting pieces together, and I was under the impression that the attack was imminent. The main reason was that the Omanese foreign minister was visiting Washington. So I was just telling my wife and some other friends that if the negotiations had gone well the way that the Iranian foreign minister had claimed, there is absolutely no reason for the foreign minister of Oman to come here and visit and try to make another case. So obviously something hasn't gone well. And after the American negotiators and President Trump declined to meet with the Omani's foreign minister, then that led me to the conclusion that the attack is either going to happen within next couple of days or the coming week. I found out early hours in the morning. I think, like many other Iranians, we've become very accustomed to checking our phones every hour in the middle of the night to find out if the attack has happened over the past month. And I found out around like 3 a.m. That the attack has in fact taken place, and woke up my wife, and we're in celebration. This was a moment of jubilation. We had waited for this moment for a very long time, and we saw this as a start of a new beginning. There's still a long way to go. This is not a regime that depends on one single individual. It has a very unique structure, and it's very decentralized in certain ways and centralized in certain aspects. And that is why we are still looking forward to this military intervention happen. But it's been celebration. I've been in contact with my friends in Iran. They've been celebrating as much as they can.
So let's talk a little bit about what you think might come next here, because to the point that Pouya is making, this is not just an autocracy with one leader and then everything dissolves. And in fact, much of the reporting that I've seen indicates that Iran's leadership had planned contingencies in case there was the death of the supreme leader. He has a 56-year-old son who has been talked about as a possible successor. There are varying reports on whether his son has been killed. We don't know. I don't know if you have any information better than I do. I don't know. But certainly we know, I mean, when President Trump says they had identified possible successors, and the successors that the Trump administration identified are already dead in the airstrikes, there's a lot of uncertainty. So let me start with Pouya on this. What do you think happens next? And we'll get into hopes coming up here, but realistically, what does the next wave of leadership look like? Do you expect the regime to try to hold on to power, to try to crush dissent, to flee? What do you expect to happen?
I expect that the next wave of leadership that is currently taking control, they're going to be more radical. So more radical. We still have at least sort of a layer of leadership in Iran that needs to be removed before we get to the pragmatic ones that are going to realize that military confrontation, ideological stances are not going to be in the best interest of either themselves or the Iranian people. So those attacks that took place on some of the Persian Gulf countries and states, a lot of those are the result of these radical military commanders that have taken over these decisions in Iran. I think over the next few days, the main focus should be on elimination of these individuals. There are some more pragmatic individuals that are in the higher ranks of the regime that might serve as a transitional bridge between our current state in Iran and a democracy, perhaps. But there is work to be done until we get there.
And President Trump has called for the leadership and the rank and file in the Iranian military to lay down their arms and stop fighting. Do you expect that to happen?
I expect at least at parts of the military. So the Iranian military is also very complex. So we have the Revolutionary Guard, which is highly ideological. But we need to understand that a lot of those recruits at the lower ranks of the Revolutionary Guard, at the army, those are people that are just serving their military service. They're not professional military personnel. They don't want to be in this position any more than any of the normal Iranians do. There is a chance that they would defect, they would put down their arms and leave the sort of the core ideological aspects of the Revolutionary Guard sort of alone in this fight. So there is a possibility of that. There is still the besieged militia, which if the leadership of that militia is removed, there's a chance that they might find it very difficult to regroup. We've seen that in the past when there is lack of leadership. They have lost control in certain past uprisings that Iranians have had. When there has been leadership, well, unfortunately, they have been highly effective in crushing dissent. So hopefully with the removal of those leaders, that threat to the Iranian people would be neutralized, and maybe in the next week or 2 weeks, it will be safe for people to actually start taking over institutions.
Niaz, what do you expect this regime to try to do next here?
So as I'm just following the news, I see that the regime is not quitting. In fact, it's escalating the situation with spreading the war beyond just Iran, United States and Israel, and is actually expanding all over the other Arab countries. So I think for them is just try to very last moment to survive. However, I think for this government, they know that this is their end of it. And they have no other places to go. So I think it's gonna take time. It's not as easy as we took the supreme leader and he's out and then we are good to go. It's not like that. As just Pouya said, there is multiple layers in the government and in the military and IRGC that they kind of act in parallel and then take controls of things in parallel. In fact, the spokesperson for Iran, he just said I think yesterday, he just said as we lost the supreme leader, all the parts of the military are working in parallel and they are working on their own. As we just told them to just attack whoever or whatever place you can do, and then there is no commands or there is no instructions coming from the top. So they are just trying their last moment to keep their heads up the water. While I cannot be 100% positive about the outcomes, I want to still be optimistic about what comes next, and hopefully in the next couple weeks we see a more level battlefield that people can really come outside and then take action. I just want to reiterate that again, the Iranian people have talked about their agenda. They don't want anybody from the inside of this government to take the control. They don't want it. They want this. They want the end of this Islamic Republic regime. They have lost 40,000 people in the last couple months. And this was peaceful protests. People were there with their kids, pregnant women were there, people family were there, and they were all killed and blind shot like they were not expected. And then we lost 40,000 people in just 2 days, not just 2 days, 5 hours, 10 hours. And this is like catastrophic. This is like genocide. Yet, after all these grief and all these losing of people, yet the Iranian students come to the university and chant again that we want this regime again. So I think for the Iranian people, at this moment, there is no turnaround. They will continue, and they will continue their battle against this regime until they take it down. What happens next, I understand, is going to be very complex, but I think we have a clear mission and we know what we don't want. So at least we are clear about that. Then we should take step by step.
Okay, and so let me ask both of you. Pouya, I'll start with you. When we see all of these images, and not just Tehran, but images across Iran of different demonstrations now, it's hard to know in the moment if what we're looking at is representative of what the Iranian people want. Both of you are telling us that, in general, the Iranian people want this. They want the end of this regime. They want change. Once in a while, we've seen in the last couple of days video of what looked to me to be, and again, just from what I'm seeing, mostly men protesting the death of the supreme leader and condemning the strikes. Do you believe that that is a small portion? How would you expect the numbers actually break down in terms of, what's your best guess, Pouya, in terms of what the Iranian people are feeling here?
Well, let me start with this. In 2015, the estimates of people who support Bashar Assad in Syria were 47%. And this was not an estimate based that his regime put out there. This was an estimate based on sort of foreign organizations. They felt that there was 10 to 15% Alawites, and there was a significant Sunni population, the Kurds. They were all supporting him. When it came to people actually standing up to the regime, we found out that that was not really the case, and the overwhelming majority of the Syrians were opposing Bashar Assad. Iran's Islamic regime has been overwhelmingly successful in organizing its masses and creating large crowds in specific places. So they would gather people from all the sort of different cities. They would bring them to a location of interest. They will create a large crowd. Look, it's a 90 million, 92 million population country. If you have 10% of the population, that's going to be 9 million people. If you can get like 10% of that, it's going to be 1 million people. It's going to be a large population, and people would be misled to believe that, well, that is a large population that supports the regime. But that's a population that is protected, they are armed, and they are pro-regime. Now, my estimate is at least 60 to 70%, and this is not a scientific estimate.
I understand.
And it's just would be actively looking for the removal of the regime. There is 20% that are hoping that it will go, but they won't want to get engaged. And there's probably 10% diehard supporters of the regime. And that is based on my convenience sampling, right? So the people that I see around me, I've seen a lot of people that were staunch supporters of the regime that have now turned. I see, and I see the communications among my chat groups, and how these large groups of people that were once either neutral on certain stances are no longer neutral. They take to the streets. Some of them were shot during these protests, people that I know. Some of them lost loved ones, people got arrested, but this is no longer a society that is behind this regime. They have made a separation between this regime and the country. When Qasem Soleimani was assassinated a few years ago, we had large crowds of people at the time that associated him with some sort of a heroic figure for Iran. During the last protest, people were burning his statues. It's a complete turnaround. People have started to separate the symbolism of what represents the regime with what really represents the Iranian identity. So that would be my assessment.
Okay. Yeah. And so I wonder, Niaz, if you generally agree with how Pouya breaks down the Iranian populace there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I just want to reiterate that, like, there is no free media in Iran. Like, all the footage and everything you see is from pro-regime media. So none of them, then if you imagine, like, all the protests and everything that were actually happened on that 2 nights, none of them were broadcasted from the country or to the to the outside. I would also like to say that, like, it appears that, like, some media doesn't want to coverage as much as it has to be. Like, just 2 weeks ago we had, like, international protests all around the world. Around I think 600,000 people appeared to protest in Toronto, in Munich, in Los Angeles, in Sydney. Like, more than around 2 million, less than 2 million people appeared in these protests. So this is like 2 million people, and I think our diaspora is like 5 million. So this is like a good sampling of the population. And then again, like Pouya said, many people was still maybe at some point, like, we're talking about, like, this is our government, like, they do bad things, but, like, yeah, this is our government, they're trying to, like, protect us. But at some point, the real face of this government has been cleared for everybody. And I think, again, at this point, there are some people who are pro-U.S. intervention, and there are some people who are opposing it. But I think more than 70, even 80% of the people who really want this regime to be gone. So that, I think, a very large portion of the population are agreeing with this comment.
So, listeners, if you want to offer questions, comments on this, you can email the program, connections@wxxi.org. You can call the program toll-free, 844-295-TALK, 844-295-8255. 263-WXXI if you're in Rochester, 263-9994. If you're watching on YouTube, you can join the chat there. There is one, I think, very important point that I want to ask both of you about. And I understand the American people who are nervous about another war in the Middle East, because what they saw was, going back, well, you can go back before 1991, but let's start in 1991. George H.W. Bush tells the Iraqis, rise up, overthrow your government. Some try, they're crushed, they're killed. Then the United States goes into Iraq in 2003. It became a disaster. What happened next was not well planned. It was not well understood. In Syria, Bashar al-Assad was a horrific figure. But what we're learning now is what comes next is not easy to figure out or plan for, and it might not be what people in the West want. And certainly in Afghanistan, years of American intervention to try to not only eliminate the Taliban, but to create some sort of a structured democratic society. Now the Taliban is back in control. So for Americans who see that and they say, why are we doing this in Iran? Look what happened in Iraq. Look what happened in Afghanistan. Look at Syria. The best case that I have read recently indicates this. This is not my expertise. I'm reading it. That's why I'm asking both of you. That we cannot just assume that Iran is Afghanistan, is Iraq, that it is different, that it is a little more homogenous population, a more modern society, true animus to the regime, and true opportunity to maybe take an opportunity and to make change in the way that we would want. Maybe that's too optimistic, but I'll start with Pouya. Do you think that the comparisons that Americans, I think, are justifiably making, saying, is this another Iraq? Is this another Afghanistan in the making? Your Iran, different enough that you believe that this can go differently?
Let me first start with the question of why, right? So why should we intervene? As I'm now speaking as an Iranian American, right?
Yeah.
There's a security issue, but there's also an economic imperative. The Iranian regime in the past 4 decades has cost the U.S. economy over $1.5 trillion. Some estimates are $2.5 trillion in unnecessary military readiness costs. We could have spent that money way better elsewhere. And I'm not counting all the other human rights related violations that they've committed. For Iranians, it's been every year that this regime has been in power, it's been more deaths. Just thinking about going back to 2020, this regime was on its knees. There were sanctions in place. They had economic issues. Sanctions were removed. What happened next? They restricted the imports of vaccines. Lack of vaccines resulted in an additional 75,000 deaths. We had all those issues and then the executions. Now, going back to the other question, Iran is the oldest continuously inhabited country in the world. Our borders were never defined, drawn by any country. It's not like any of those countries that have been created after World War I, after World War II. We never separated from another country. All these different groups, ethnicities, some called them nationalities within the Iranian borders, we intermix, we mingle, we have a common culture, we have a common history, we intermarry, we unite in a way that a lot of these other countries do not. Our constitutional revolution about 118 years ago, we had people who were Turkish speaking that they moved from northwestern part of Tehran to conquer the capital that was Persian speaking just to bring them freedom. A few years ago, when that Kurdish girl, Mahsa Amini, was killed, we had people in Baluchistan, completely different ethnicity, in southeastern part of Iran. They went to the streets, they got killed because they were asking for justice for that Kurdish girl. We have we have our Arabs that stood up to, when Saddam Hussein in 1980 attacked Iran, he was under the impression that the Arab provinces in Iran are going to welcome him and are going to try to separate and join Iraq. They were the ones that stood up and tried to keep the borders. I don't think we're going to see any of those issues here. All of us, will unite around a common cause, and that is justice and freedom from Iranians. This is a very different country. We have one identity. We're Iranian. That is not a race. That is not an ethnicity. There is no such language as an Iranian language, as an Iranian ethnicity, as an Iranian race. But it's just an idea that brings us all these different cultures and languages together. I don't think there's any other country like that in the world, quite honestly. I told my son Soren, you got to be quite proud of this. There is no such thing like that. And and for that reason, I think we're not going to see Iran become like a Syria or like a Libya, like in Iraq. I think we're all going to pull together, we're going to hold on, and we're going to make this sort of work for all of us, not just for some of us.
Okay. Niaz, same question for the Americans who are nervous and they see the history of regime change. Can it be different in Iran?
So, as an Iranian American, that I really value American principles, I really understand the Americans' concerns about getting involved into this situation. I really feel for the families who have their loved ones on duty in this war, and then who have lost their loved ones, American troops. But at the same time, I want to say that for Iranians, this is like not a war. They don't see it as a war. They see it as a sort of humanitarian help. When we see a country is mass killing 40,000 of people in just one day, and let alone how many people were murdered and killed and suppressed during the past 40 years, I think it's for the international community to not stay silent and indifferent, but to basically intervene and then stop the oppressive system. Having said that, if we are going back to this question of like what is in this for the American society, for the American people, I want to say that I think, to me, this war has not been started today or on Saturday. This war against America and also international community and Iranian population has been started many years ago when this Islamic Republic regime started to put on threats on people, especially American citizens. Like they took 360 American citizens as hostage for 1 year for no reason. They continue threatening, other countries. They're continuing their proxy efforts all around the region. So think about this regime that killed, again, its own people in 2 days, these many people. And then think about if this regime has achieves these nuclear arsenals, what they're gonna do with that. Like this regime with this unhinged power that they do whatever they want and they do whatever they can to just survive. So there is no limit on the things they want to do and they can do. So if, again, I'm not a political scientist. I don't want to compare this against the previous administration, like a war against Iraq. But I want to say, like, at least, like, if we are not, if everybody is not on the same boat that, like, what should be the best action, at least we should be in consensus, or we all can acknowledge that this is a threat to the this regime is a threat to the international community. And it has to be stopped. It continued its unhinged proxy, again, efforts, continue to condemn and murder and suppress its own people. And if we just stay and then legitimize their actions and their doings, like what the other, what we have done in the past, so they just continue with all this evil things that they are doing. It has to be stopped. Again, I think the most important reasoning here is that they are the threat, the single threat, I would say at this moment, to the international community and including American people, unfortunately.
My guests are Iranian Americans, Dr. Niaz Abdolrahim, Associate Professor of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Rochester, Dr. Pouya Seifzadeh, who is Associate Professor of Strategy at SUNY Geneseo and a local business owner. And after we take this only break, I've got your phone calls lined up. We'll take some comments as well on email. We'll do that next on Connections.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Mary Cariola Center, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, believing an informed and engaged community is a connected one. marycariola.org.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. All right, to the phone calls we go. This is Tony in Geneseo. Hi, Tony. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm 100% against this involvement. Donald Trump started this war in 2018. He abrogated the JCPOA. It was working. Iran is not a threat to us. Iran is a minuscule thing compared to Russia. They've got so many ballistic missiles and so many nuclear weapons, and we've stood that down for, 60 years. We're out there trying to help Israel, trying to fix everyone else's problems. I'm done with that. Let's take care of our own problems. And if we weren't so belligerent at times to Iran, maybe things would get better. We installed the Shah, okay? And now we want to put the Shah's son back after he got kicked out, after we got rid of Melchizedek? Come on. This is over. And this is just stirring the pot, right, for more military intervention. And the best thing to do is to try to get along. And we had a deal. So Donald Trump didn't start this war 2 days ago. He started it 8 years ago. And so you say 70% of Iranians are against this government. Well, Reuters just took a poll. 75% of Americans are against this. And I'm one of those 75%.
All right, Tony, thank you for that. So I'm going to let our guests jump in here. First of all, Tony brings up Reza Pahlavi, who is the son of the Shah, as he mentioned. He did an interview with CBS 60 Minutes this weekend. He is certainly positioning himself as a possible returning leader. And I'll just ask both of our guests here. Niaz, we talked about him a little bit last time, but what do you think of Reza Pahlavi as a possible future leader of Iran?
First of all, I would like to say, at this point, I'm not talking about, we are not talking about the presidential own incentives on, going for a war or not. We are simply talking about if the external intervention is required to end this regime or not. For Pahlavi, honestly, I think it looks like a lot of people inside Iran, also a lot of people outside. We saw this in many of the protests outside the country that I talked about, around 2 million people actually, not 2 million, but around 1.5 million people actually appeared in this protest. And then there is a large population of people are supporting Reza Pahlavi. But I want to leave it for later on when we have a better situation, hopefully, after this regime is gone. Okay. While I personally think he's a good he's in a good situation for leading the transition from the current situation to the next, hopefully, secular government. He himself has talked about it many times that he wants to open up the system for everybody to come in and then for a free referendum to happen. So honestly, I think whatever comes after this, if it's not for this theocratic kind of Islamic Republic, at any type of secular government that is talking or taking the majority of the people into account, that would be a good next step for the Iranian people.
All right, Pouya, just briefly, Reza Pahlavi, yes or no?
Well, Reza Pahlavi, for the time being, he's shown good leadership. I think it is too soon to decide who is going to be the next leader. Yep. We need a person, a figure, somebody who can lead this movement until we get to the voting box, to the referendum. And at this point, he has certain advantages. One of them is that because of his royal history, he is somewhat seen beyond ethnic lines. So he's better accepted among Kurds, Arabs, Turks, Persians, Lurs, Baluchis, all these different ethnicities that form. So nobody claims him as their own. So they see him beyond us. So he's more like a unifying figure. I appreciate the fact that he has, in many instances, suggested that he is not going to claim himself as the monarch until people speak at a voting box at an election, and that is exactly what we want. When we reach that point, then we'll let people speak.
Yeah, I take the point that you're worried about the day-to-day surviving and getting past this regime.
Yeah, and the fact that I don't think up to this point I haven't seen him having taken any missteps.
Okay. Now, briefly here, Tony is saying he does not buy the idea that Iran is a threat to the world, and he said he thought the inspections on the nuclear program were working, that we did not need to veer off course. You're shaking your head, Pouya.
No, they were not, right? So I happen to know because, well, unlike Tony, I'm Iranian. I read Persian news. I read what's spoken, and I talk to people that are actively involved in different industries in Iran. No, they were not working. Yes, there was money that was released. I'm not talking about $1.7 billion. That is minuscule compared to the revenues that the regime, the government made through export of oils. That's nothing. So I don't really want to talk about that. It is a fact, yes, they stuck to the main aspects of the JCPOA during those years. Most of those funds did not trickle down to the economy. They were trickled down into building up this machine of oppression. They were trickled down. They were funding sort of the missile program, the military, the Revolutionary Guard, the proxies. If you look at the years that we had the JCPOA in sort of in effect, we had multiple times that people had uprising. They had that they were demanding having economic demands. They were crushed every single time. So no, those did not really work. When you talk to people that were connected to the regime, they were always ready to have an escape ahead as soon as they got the opportunity. And the evidence is there. As soon as the JCPOA was annulled, they started to, they were ready and prepared to enrich uranium at much higher levels, and they had built those capacities. The former President Khatami, who was in power from 1997 to 2005, multiple times he explicitly stated that they lied to inspectors, to IAEA inspectors, and this was on record after his presidency was over. No, the regime was not honest or truthful about this. Whoever believes this, they have been misinformed.
Tony, you are correct to point to the polling. I mean, right now the polling, and there's different polls out there, but certainly it doesn't look like this is a war effort so far that Americans are embracing in huge numbers. The case will have to be made by the president. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, said today he thought it was a trick question or a trap question when someone in the media asked him, well, how long do you expect this to go on? He said it could be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. They don't know. He thought that was he wasn't going to get trapped into that question. So, we'll have to see. But I do appreciate the phone call, Tony. Last time we were talking about the situation in Iran, we had Shaheen Manshapur, who couldn't join us in studio today, but Shaheen is calling in, another Iranian American. Hello, Shaheen. Go ahead.
Hi, Evan. This is Shaheen, as you said. I'd like to say, first of all, that, yes, the death of Khamenei pleased all the Iranian population, with the exception of some Basijis and IRGS members. Other than that, everybody danced, everybody was happy, including myself. Secondly, I want to go back to the very first moments of Dr. Seifzadeh's comments and agree with him that we need a week or two before we can make any predictions about what's coming next because there's a void of information, a massive void of information right now. And we don't know exactly what's going to happen and what are United States ambitions and Mr. Trump's plan. And he changes day by day, as you know. It was first about helping Iranians, then it changed to curbing the atomic bomb, then it became regime change, then it's not regime change. So we don't know. It will become clear whether this change is going to be replacing Khamenei with another dictator, being, for instance, Reza Pahlavi, or bringing back the monarchy, or Mr. Lajavardi bringing back Islamic regime. We don't know those things. And as for Reza Pahlavi, I'm very sad to hear it over and over that he has a big base in Iran. He doesn't. I was recently, I just came back from San Diego. I did witness the huge demonstration of monarchists. I didn't participate because they wouldn't allow me, because they would say only you have to chant, long live Shah. They would say in one breath, death to dictatorship and long live Shah. What does it mean? Death to dictatorship, but we want a king. So I saw their nasty, nasty behavior towards using force, using on the verge of fistfights with others who wanted to join them, and they would refuse to say long live Shah. Instead, they would hold a sign that would say, here's a picture of some of these martyrs, these thousands of people who were killed. Come on, Americans, please help us in better ways. I totally agree with Tony, your last caller, about the view of Americans. I really congratulate him on gather that kind of conceptual framework and knowing, being informed about what is the United States doing. I'm sorry I took so long. Thank you very much.
It's okay, Shaheen, and it's nice to hear from you. So I want to ask our guest in studio about a point that Shaheen is making, though. She's not wrong in that this administration has shifted the explanations for what this is about. And if we look at Venezuela, for example, they removed Maduro. But now Delcy Rodriguez is in charge, who was the vice president and viewed by Venezuelans as almost just as corrupt and perhaps equally dangerous. And the Trump administration says, well, we can keep her under control. We'll let her run things as long as she's playing ball enough. If the same situation happens, Pouya, where the Trump administration says, okay, Iran can have a new supreme leader as long as he listens to us on the nuclear weapons program, we're going to let him keep charge. Will that be a disaster, or do you think that there is some kind of a solution where the same structure stays? There's a new supreme leader, but the Trump administration kind of okays him, Israel okays him, and it's kind of a half change. What do you think?
I think any scenario that puts in place a new supreme leader is highly unlikely because the current system is in a very unstable place. People have come to streets in large masses, and I highly doubt that either President Trump or anybody else would want to have to deal with this issue all over again sometime down the future, and not in a very distant future, in a very near future. If the attacks at this point have been successful, which based on the information that I received from a lot of sources from within Iran, they have largely been, and they have taken out a lot of those very hardline supporters, those military forces of the regime. If there is another supreme leader that is in power that is going to have less of a military apparatus and their power to control the regime. So probably it's a very unlikely scenario that somebody would a calculus that somebody would take.
Okay.
Now, going back to the sort of the other issue that your caller brought up.
Yeah, you got about 30
support.
seconds. Go ahead.
So my understanding is that the support for Reza Pahlavi, and I'm not a monarchist, is actually much higher than what she thinks. Based on the information I got from some people that were not monarchists themselves, at least 50% of chants in the streets during the past month have been in support calling for his name. And I'm not saying that they want a monarchy. They're looking for a leader to get them to the ballot
transitional
box.
leader.
Yes.
Okay, that's how you would see Pahlavi.
Yes.
Okay. So briefly, Niaz, as we get ready to wrap here, Shaheen is concerned about what the next leadership could be. And the Trump administration has not been consistent on what they say this is about. Are you worried about a Venezuela situation where Maduro's gone, but now the VP is in charge? It's the same structure, the same military leadership. Are you worried about that in Iran?
I'm always worried about the future of Iran, so nothing is 100% sure. But I think, again, as Shaheen also mentioned last time, the situation in Iran is not comparable to situation in Venezuela. Like this started from the Iranian public. This was the Iranian public's demands to continue and overturn this government. So they clearly know what they want, and they clearly know, how to proceed. And then again, I would say her experience in San Diego, it was perhaps a very small observation. We see thousands and thousands of people who are peacefully chanting his name.
Pahlavi.
Pahlavi.
Okay.
And then there is no interactions or such.
Well,
escalated
this group
situation.
that we've been talking to, Iranian Americans, you're all welcome to come back soon. I know the events are going to be changing quickly. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for sharing your
Thank you very much
experience
for
with
inviting
us.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. From all of us at Connections, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching on our various platforms. We're back with you tomorrow on member-supported public media.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.